Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tat Padam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Twameva Mata Shapita Twameva Twameva Bandhuscha Sakha Twameva Twameva Vidya Dravidam Twameva Twameva Sarvam Tamadeva Deva Twameva Sarvam Tamadeva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hello.
Hi.
Mark is hosting.
Thank you, Mark.
So where are we in our text?
Chapter 17, number 41.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to use the loop. Where are we now?
Chapter 17, number 41. Nahi dipantarapeksha yatvad-deepa prakashane bodhasyatma swarupatvan bodho anyasthateshyate. Just as a second lamp is not necessary in order to illumine a lamp, so a second consciousness is not necessary to make known pure consciousness, which is of the nature of the self.
Yes. So here, the topic under discussion is, what is the instrument of knowledge by which the self is known? And the first knowledge that we're talking about is the real knowledge. The only knowledge that's real, that is beginningless, endless, eternal, and perfect, undeniable at all times. So everything in the world is known through the triple factor: knower, knowing, and known. I, Jim, through seeing, know the table. All the five senses that way. I, Jim, through manas, mind, know feelings. I, through buddhi, intellect, know thoughts. So you have consciousness which knows phenomena. But how do I know me? I'm not going to be in meditation and see the self go by. I'm not going to have an experience of the self other than me. This is one of the things, one of the illusions, misunderstandings that make self-realization a challenge. It is like trying to see your eyes. No one has ever seen their eyes. See the reflection of your eyes. You can't see your eyes. I can't see my eyes, therefore I don't see. No. Seeing is the direct experience of my eyes. So also, there's not consciousness one that's going to illumine consciousness two. I turn on the lamp. Ooh, the lamp is a light. Let me get a flashlight out to illumine the lighted lamp. No, it's not necessary. The lamp is swayam jyoti. It is in itself self-luminous. Likewise, the triple factor is merged into me. I am the knower. I am the means of knowledge. I am that which is known, but never as an object. Yet I am not unknown. When are you ever not you? How do you know you are you? You do not see, hear, touch, taste, smell, emote, or think yourself. Yet you are not unknown. Now listen carefully. Even if I think I do not know the self, I am lost in samsara, I am ignorant, oh, I suffer. If I were to ask you, do you exist? Yes. What's your existence? Miserable. Do you know your misery? Yes. I am my shine is still my direct experience. So this is what's so marvelous. In truth, even ignorance does not cover the self. It just deludes the mind. Oh, then no need for all of this sadhana. Self is already realized. The self is already known by everybody. And why are we going through all this sadhana? Because the self doesn't have any problems. Where are all my problems? My stupid mind. What is my problem? In my mind. I do not know who I am. Even though it's the most constant, obvious thing in existence. Instead, I superimpose the qualities of nama rupa, name and form, onto the self, both in terms of who I am and the phenomenal world. From that nescience, from that ignorance, stem all my problems. From that stems my problems. That's the issue. That's the issue. So, if it's the mind that suffers, what I want to do then is deal with the suffering of the mind. How do I get out of the suffering of my mind? understand first that when the mind throws up a counterfeit self, this chit chaya, this fake news, I have to begin to see, oh, that's not me. Who am I? I'm okay. I'm never touched. I'm never threatened. Then the second part of it is, how can I be happy? What is happiness? Happiness is a mind state. It is the mind state free from craving. And we prove it every night. Whatever your problems are, when you go to sleep, no problems. Oh, this Vedanta is cheap. All I have to do is sleep all day. Doesn't work that way. We have to remove the mind's compulsion to extrovert into the external world. Why does it do that? Because the mind believes I do not have happiness. Happiness is out there. I am miserable. I have to fix the world. Misery is out there. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Vishayatvam vikaritvam nanatvam vanahishyate na heyo na pyupadeya atmananyena vatataha. The self is not an object of knowledge. There is no change or manyness in it. It is therefore capable of neither being accepted nor rejected by itself or by anyone else.
So he thunders, the self is not an object of knowledge. If you can see it, if you can know it, if you can cognize it, that isn't it. And this is where drug-induced experiences can be so deceptive. Oh, I went to Burning Man and I took ecstasy, Molly, is that what they call it? And I just felt so one with everything. I'm glad you felt that. But did you feel it before you took the ecstasy? No. What were you feeling? I was frustrated at the traffic. What happened when you came down from the drug? Oh, there was mud everywhere. It was terrible. So whatever it was that you experienced, that's certainly not the eternal factor. Who was it who knew the mind driving through the desert? Me. Who was it who knew the drug experience? Me. Who was it who was frustrated at all the rain and the mud? Me. You are the eternal factor. Let go of the craving of the mind. The mind comes home to itself. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Sabahya bhayantaro जीर्णो जन्म मृत्युर्मृत्युजराधिकः अहमात्मेति यो वेत्ति कुतो कुतोऽन्वेव बिभेति सः. Why should a man have even the least fear who knows that he is the self comprising the interior and exterior, beyond birth, decay, death, and old age?
So, what is my fear about? I'm afraid I'm not going to get what I want. I'm afraid I'm going to lose what I have. I'm afraid that I am threatened. I'm going to be less than, and ultimately, I am going to cease to exist. The ego goes, may I always be, may I never cease to be. It's funny, you would think old people would have an easier time dying. Nope. If we're spiritually prepared, it's easy. We're not, it's full of fear. Actually, children die much more gracefully through attachments. But that survival instinct, meaning the survival of the body, because I think the body is me. So those of us who are not children, who are grown-ups, and the few of us who are sliding down the backside of life, we've had enormous experiences. We've had our allotted dose of joys and sorrows, successes and failures. Environments have changed, relationships have changed. Yet I am. We have decades of empirical evidence. I go nowhere. And I love what Ram Dass says, even dying is completely safe. Any thoughts? Next verse.
Prage vaita dvidhe karma varnitva derapohanat tadsthula dishastrebhyasta tvameveti nishchayat. It is only before the negation of the idea of caste, etc., on the evidence of the Shruti, not large, the ascertainment of the nature of the self on the authority of the sentence, thou art that, and before the demonstration of the self to one, on the part of the knowledge portion of the Vedas, that Vedic actions are to be performed and not afterwards.
Yes. So it's convoluted in translation. What he basically is saying is, while you are still identified with the body, before we've begun our exploration into the knowledge of the self, the karma kanda, the work portion, the action portion of the Vedas is to be practiced. You do your rituals, you get married, you have kids, you have a job, you have your ambitions, etc. But when you enter into the knowledge portion, that stuff starts to fall away. You still have some actions. Viveka, Vairagya, Samadhi, Guna, Mumukshutva. Meditate, renounce. But when we're rooted in knowledge, even the mumukshu, the seeker after liberation, gone. Nothing is required of the person of steady wisdom. No rules, no laws. Now, I like to say, the seeker, the sadhak, is seen to be doing spiritual practices so that they may purify their mind and realize the self. The siddha, the person of steady wisdom, may also be seen to be doing spiritual practices. It does not add to their knowledge of the self. It's the highest form of you go to Arunachala, and Brahmana Maharshi is lying down on his couch, deep in samadhi. Yet he would come out of that state, used to like to cook and hang out in the kitchen, walked around the hill every day. For 11 years, he didn't speak at all. And he starts to teach. God, no rules for the person of steady wisdom. This is what Jesus implied when he said, I of myself do no thing. It is the Father within that doeth the work. Turn your equipment over to Yeshua. Have no concern. Gain and loss, success and failure is God's job. I am kutastha, immovable. Going nowhere, doing nothing. Next verse.
Purva deha parityage jatyadinam praharnataha dehasyeva tujatyadi tasyapyevam yanatmata. Caste, etc., given up with the giving up of the previous body, do belong to the body only and not to the self. For the very same reason of being perishable, the body is also not the self.
So when a person receives Diksha, initiation, and enters the Swami order, that's where you get a last name with, or a name with ends with Ananda, and most of the time, and you wear the orange robes. The ritual is actually a funerary rite. And there's a little doll that's made out of rice that gets cremated. And everything before that is called Purvasham, your prior existence, your prior life. And in fact, it's disrespectful to ask a Swami or a Swamini, what did you do before? It's a little bit different now in modern times. But the idea is the Swami is dead to this world, has given up caste, station in life, social position, relatives, everything. So for you and me, as we function in the West, we need to take that internal sannyas. Be like an actor in a play. Put on a costume to play wife or husband, retired with a job, parent or not. And in the end, the body itself is a costume. And the day will come, even that goes. But you go nowhere. Any thoughts on this? It's funny, I just popped into my mind. There's an interview with the great Canadian tenor, John Vickers, who's no longer with us. And he's in his dressing room before some performance. I think it might have been Otello. And he's sitting there with, a towel around his shoulders, putting makeup on. He says, what a strange way to make a living. So your life, what a strange way to make a living. It's you, but it's not you. Next verse.
Mamaham chetito vidya sharirādishvanatmasu atmagyanena heyo syat suranamiti shruteha. The conceptions of me and mine with regard to the non-self, the body, etc., are due to ignorance and should be renounced by means of self-knowledge, as there is the Shruti of the Asuras.
By means of the Shruti, etc.
As there is the Shruti of the Asuras. And let me see the footnote.
Asuras, the demons?
Opponents of gods, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
What's the note say?
It just defines Asuras as the opponents of gods.
Read one more time so now that I know what it means.
The conceptions of me and mine with regard to the non-self, the body, etc., are due to ignorance and should be renounced by means of self-knowledge, as there is the Shruti of the Asuras.
I'm not sure which Shruti he's referring to, but basically the Asuras are the one class of demons which fight the Devas or the Suras, the demigods. But the point here is these are actually states of consciousness. The two classes of demons that scriptures talk about a lot, the Asuras and the Rakshasas. The Asuras are usually anger, and Rakshasas are greed. So why would I have Asura mentality? I'm angry. Why am I angry? Because I'm not getting what I want. I'm caught up in me and mine with that. Gimme, 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 gimme. I'm not getting it. So what's the antidote? I'm in that state because I'm caught up in ignorance. I think I'm a person. I think the phenomenal world is separate from me and real. Has inherent joy-giving and misery-producing qualities. What's the antidote? Atma Jnanena. I think that's what he said, wasn't it? Instrumental case, by means of knowledge of self. Ego is a function in the mind. It tells me I'm the body plus the personality. And it tells me I'm restless, irritable, and discontent, and the solution is more, better, different. That impels me into kartavya, the struggle of ego. Yoga says, my problem is I'm deluded. Problem is I'm deluded. Yoga, but the scriptures say, find out who I am. Who am. Become a full knower of the Supreme. And retire into the Supreme. Drown the mind. Next one. You have returned. Lose your place.
No. I thought, okay. दशाः शौचकार्याणां पारिव्राज्ये विवर्तनम् यथा ज्ञानस्य सम्प्राप्तौ तद्वज्जात्यादिकर्मणाम्. Just as the duty of observing defilement for 10 days following childbirth or the death of a kinsman is refrained from when one becomes a wandering religious mendicant, so the duties belonging to particular castes, etc., come to an end when right knowledge is achieved.
So this has to do with ritual purity. So if you're a Brahmin, there are certain things that defile you, supposedly. So if a woman gives birth, she has to observe 10 days where she can't do specific things because she's unclean. Or if you touch a dead body, unclean. And Hindus are not the only ones with these kinds of rituals. Judaism has them too. Christianity has them. All of them, in the end, have nothing to do with the sannyasi. The self is never defiled. The self is never made impure by any action. Now, let's look at the deeper teaching here. I'm thinking of a particular student. Pretty rooted in his knowledge of the self, cruising along pretty well. Mind tunes up really well. But he must have had some sort of an attachment, an identification with being a pretty good yogi. And then he found himself having an anger episode with his heart. After the fact, he knew, oh, I was a jerk. I love those moments because it's like the Lord going, slap! You think you're so enlightened? Don't try to be an enlightened person. No, you are corrupt. And the equipment is by definition limited. To attempt to purify the equipment is like trying to count to the highest number. You never get there. Thank God the self is already pure. Any thoughts on this?
Jim, I have a thought on the previous verse.
Please.
And that is, we speak of knowers of the self. And I guess we're talking about individuals, but the mind doesn't know the self. It's just the subtle intellect has some kind of memory or feeling about the self that was experienced. And so would you explain what knower of the self is? And when we speak of individuals,
There-
it's know the self.
There are two ways of talking about it. You've hit a very important point. Normally, when we hear the term the knower of Brahman or the knower of the self, the Jivan Mukta, the liberated person, it's a description of the individual.
Mhm.
So, what has happened to this individual? This individual has gone through a process where the mind becomes purified enough that you can have at least once a moment where the mind has ceased all movement, all meditation. Only I remain. But that's an experience.
Mhm.
So when the mind returns from samadhi, it's transformed by that.
Mm. Okay.
So we say that both bondage and liberation occur to the mind. The self is ever free. But we don't want to get caught up in the Vedanta logic loop, which is both bondage and liberation aren't real, so why even bother to strive hard for liberation? You might as well just smoke some dope or shoot heroin and scream at your wife. What that does is rationalize our suffering. So self-realization, being a knower of Brahman from that standpoint, is a very relatively real thing. We do want to undergo that transformation. The idea here is the mind can reflect on something and it will shift. How many times have I done this in class? Rub your hands together. The instrument for hand rubbing is hands. Now we're going to do a second process called reflection. When you did that, was it motion or stasis? Motion. Did it create heat or cold? It created heat. The instrument for reflection is the intellect, the mind. The instrument for hand rubbing is hands. If you sit on your hands with your intellect, can you know hand rubbing? Well, not really. You have to rub your hands together first, then reflect on it. Now, this breaks down because hand rubbing, in fact, is an objective experience. It has a beginning and an end of qualities. Yourself is eyeing all the time. Does that make it a little clearer?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Jim.
And the greatest of saints, deep in the self, she goes to sleep at night. What's her knowledge in her mind? Nothing. Is the self asleep? No. Self-realization does not mean the poor woman has to stay awake all night. We don't mean that. And again, what has the problem? It's the mind that has the problem. Sadhana is for the mind. Self has no problems. What is the mind's problem? The mind's problem is its ignorance. And again, we have indirect knowledge gained through the scripture and the teacher. And then we have the direct experience. Aparoksha jnana. Gain through turning the mind's eye, the attentive faculty, back on the source, the substrate. Who am I? Investigate the nature of I. Very good question, Mark. All right, next verse.
Yat kamasta takrat krutva kritam tvajya prapadyate yada svatma trisha kamaha pranuchyante mritastada. A man of ignorance reaps the results of those actions done according to particular desires, followed by particular determinations. But when the desires of a man of self-knowledge vanish, he becomes immortal.
And the word here that he's used is amrita. The root is mrit, which means death, where we get the English word mortality or mortal. Mortician. All these come from the same root. Immortal is beyond death. Amritam. But amritam also means nectar. So the person in ignorance grunts and sweats under a weary life, as Shakespeare says. But the woman or the man of knowledge is able to let go and let go. See if I can come up with a worldly experience. So, person's car won't start. Turn the key and nothing happens. Oh dear. So they go to the car parts store and they purchase a new ignition. They install the new ignition. Stick the key in the new ignition and turn it, still won't start. Finally, they lift the hood and the battery's dead. They did all this labor to fix the wrong problem. So also you and me think, I am unhappy. I don't have enough money. I don't have the right job. I don't have the right partner. I don't have the right this. I'm sad because he said this, she said that. The wrong president. The wrong country. And we put all this labor into fixing that problem. And yoga says, unfortunately, that's not the problem. What's the problem? Avidya, ignorance. Why am I so unhappy? Kama, craving. Spriha, longing. Kartavya, obligatory action. I'm fixing the wrong problem.
It's still going on, it's clearly.
Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Atmarupa viddeha karyam priyatibhyo nivartanam na sadhyam sadhanam patma nityatripta smritir mataha. The outcome of the ascertainment of the real nature of the self is cessation from actions, etc. The self is neither an end nor a means. It is, according to the Smriti, eternally contented.
Eternally contented.
Contended.
Contended. I have no idea what it
It
means.
might be a typo.
Yeah. So the idea here is the person in ignorance is still caught up in obligatory actions. What I mean by that is I'll be happy when, it'll be better if. This deeply rooted conviction in the intellect that happiness is there then, not here now. But here, what Smriti here means works like the Bhagavad Gita and Ramayana, etc. It is the mind learning to come home and abide in the self, independent of the phenomenal world. I get a taste of my self nature when I satisfy a desire. That is a mediated experience where I'm dependent on a medium. Yogi learns to let go, to have a non-mediated experience of the joy of my own self nature. It is immediate, no longer dependent on the world. How do I get out of suffering completely? Profound, deep insight into what's causing it, and endeavoring to let go of the habituated cause of misery. I need this, I need that. Give me, give me, give me, give me. And if I don't get what I want, now behave. Next verse.
Utpadyapyavikaryaणि sanskaryam cha kriyaphalam natonyat karmana karyam tyajyet smat sadhanam. Four things only are the results of actions via the production, acquisition, transformation, and purification of something. They produce no other results. All actions with their accessories should therefore be given up.
So again, this is desire-prompted activity. The scripture is not saying sit and do nothing. In other scriptures, Shankara will say even maintenance of the body. is not possible without action. Eventually, you're going to get up and go to the toilet. You're going to breathe. Scripture says no actions. I'm going to quit breathing. Try it. It's an action. But this false hope, somehow I'm going to be able to get what I want and that'll make it all better. And other scriptures will say all of this, these four fruits of action, can all be summed up into the word artha, which means wealth. And the scripture is very clear. It's always impermanent. It's always fine. Makes me a little happy, but not very happy. Trinkets and baubles at best. So here Shankar is saying, let it go. And the body will continue to act, fulfilling its role in the world, impelled by the force of the past. You and I have no relationship to it. Nobody has any particular concern about their shadow, whether it's long or short, whether it falls in the gutter or falls in the swimming pool. See the body like a shadow. Next verse.
There are two verses together.
Okay.
Tapantatvad atma atmarthatvacha bahih sanhrityatmani tam pritim satyarthi gurumashayet shantam pragyam tatha muktam nishkriyam brahmani sthitam Shruteracharyavan Veda Tadvidhiti Smritestatha. One desirous of attaining truth should withdraw into the self the love that he has for external persons or things. For this love, secondary to that for the self, is evanescent and entails pain. He then should take refuge in a teacher, a knower of Brahman, who is tranquil, free, bereft of actions, and established in Brahman, as the Shruti and Smriti say. One having a teacher knows, and knows that, and know that.
Yes. So one of the values of a teacher, good teacher, is Shrotriya. Literally, it means well versed in the scripture. But the deeper meaning is the teacher can wield a valid means of knowledge. But the teacher also should be a full knower of the Supreme and has retired into the Supreme. So that if you and I have that trick of being able to tune up, this is the deeper meaning of surrender. It's not like being in the army where they tell you what to do. It's not, surrender doesn't mean the guru gives us orders. It means go where my mind goes. Come join me, reveling in the infinite. Let me show you the awakened state of mind. Now, here Shankara is saying, give up the foolishness of the world. Yeah. But you've heard me say many times, in the end, we're healed not so much by what we turn from as by what we turn to. Come home. Think of the self. Love the self. Worship the self. Parama prema. Revel in the self. Remember the self. Turn your mind to the self. To me, this is the deeper meaning of the teaching of Jesus when he says, I have overcome the world. Doesn't mean he went out and beat everybody up. Means when the mind can come home. What world? Easily leaves the world. All right, one more.
Sagurustaretyuktam shishyam shishya gunanritam brahma vidya plavenashu svantathanta mahoditham. The teacher should immediately take the disciple in the boat of the knowledge of Brahman across the great ocean of darkness, which is within him, the disciple, who is of a one-pointed mind and endowed with the qualities of a true disciple.
So when the teacher comes across a fit student, it's his duty. Actually, it's not a duty, it's his nature. It's funny. I was watching videos of elephants giving birth. And in the herd, once the elephant cow has dropped her baby, all the rest of the herd, they all come. It's their instinct. See the new baby, to protect the new baby, to help the mother and the baby. It's their nature. So also, it's the nature of the teacher to help the student cross the ocean of change. All right, good place to stop today. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.